Fine. Okay, I think we should start now. We should not wait much longer. So welcome back to this third session of HRM. And in the last session, we were discussing certain things related to strategic human resource management. We discussed few things about organizational life cycle and what are the HR strategies that are being followed. We look, I think, at corporate strategy, competitive strategy, and functional strategies, and what role HR department plays when organization is following any one of those strategies. So there was some discussion, few examples. I think those were shared. And in today's session, we are going to take up one case. This case is has to be seen from the lens of strategic management and strategic human resource management. And I think the two groups must have prepared the case well. Group 3 and group 6, I believe. Are you guys there? Can anyone confirm?
Yes, sir, I am from group 6.
Okay, great. Anyone from group 3?
Yes, sir. Group 3 is also here.
Okay, wonderful. We will have this case discussion from both the groups, and then we will see that how the things relate to what we have studied and what does it mean for any organization. But before that, quickly, I just want to revise the basic thing about how we are going to take forward this case discussion. So one by one, the group will come. For today's session, both the groups have got the same case, which has advantages and disadvantages. We will discuss towards the end. So how we are going to take it forward is that the first group will come and they will get about 15 minutes to first make a presentation. Okay, they can take little less time also. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to complete it to take the entire 15 minutes for the presentation. During the presentation, the group will not give you any answers. Okay, the group will not try to form any kind of an opinion. They would not try to give you any answers to what is happening in the case. They would just present the facts, the characters, the situation, crisis, issue, whatever is mentioned in the case, they will just present it. And then once that presentation is over, then the group members are supposed to lead a discussion in the class in which the group can ask questions, the class will answer, or maybe the class can also have few questions which the group members are supposed to answer. And towards the last 5 minutes or so, then the group has this opportunity that whatever they discussed among themselves or whatever they figured out from the case, they can present those findings and they can summarize the case for the class and try to build a consensus with them if they disagree. Okay, so we'll do this exercise group wise, right? And for this discussion, you will get about 20 minutes. But if the discussion is going on really good, I may give you some additional time. Otherwise, after the completion of those 20 minutes or so, I'll just post a message in the chat box that you have to wind it up quickly, right? And then we will repeat the same exercise with group 2. If in case the group 1 has made a really good presentation and I feel that everything is covered, I may ask the group 2 to directly come to the discussion and they don't really have to present the entire thing again. So that also is possible. Or if they want to additionally show certain things which they feel that the first group has failed to mention in the class, they can do that. So that thing would be there, but they would have more independence in this thing, that if they want to cut short their presentation or directly want to jump to the discussion, they can do that, because today we have the same case for both the groups, right? Regarding the marking also, let me just make it clear once more that total 20 marks are there for this case discussion. Out of these 20, 12 are for the first part, which is the presentation part, in which it is not necessary that all the members of the group have to make a presentation, but all of them would get the equal marks out of 12 for making that presentation. Okay, and the remaining 8 marks out of 20, that depends upon your individual performances. Okay, so if somebody is asking more questions or leading a good discussion, or they are answering the questions asked by the class well, so accordingly there might be some differentiation out of 8 marks. Okay, typically, let me also tell you, there is not much of a difference. 1 or 2 marks difference may be there among the group members, but yes, difference could be there. And in larger scheme of things, when we are finalizing your internals, in the end, those 1 or 2 marks can also lead to some big difference. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you guys, before we begin this exercise, if you guys have any question, group members, you can ask quickly, and then we will move forward. Okay, great. So group 3 and group 6, which one of you would like to go first? Anyone would like to take a lead? Okay, so let's start with group 3 only. Group 3, whom shall I make the presenter? Am I audible, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, group 3. Who would like to become the presenter?
So can we go ahead? Group 6, can we go ahead? Sorry for the late response.
Okay, okay. Group 3, you don't want to go first now?
Sir, we
No,
can
sir.
go first. It's not an issue, but I think one of our members is having some kind of an emergency. If we can get just 10 minutes, it would be great, sir.
Okay, group 6, we'll begin with you. Whom shall I make the presenter? Please raise your hand. Yeah, group 6. Any confusion?
1 minute, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir. This
Rishabh
is
has.
Rishabh this side. Yes, I will become the presenter.
Okay, okay. Yeah, you are presenter now.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah. We can see the screen. See this. So you can begin now. Okay, and you have roughly about 15 minutes to finish your presentation. Okay, the conclusion and recommendation that I can see on your slide, don't show it. If you have some answers in those slides, don't show it to the class. First, have a discussion. Only once the discussion is over, then you can show those things.
Sure, sir.
Good morning, sir. I'm Rahul, and I like to start the discussion. So, firstly, we have I like to quickly introduce the team to you. We have Arvind, Manish, we have Shalini. I am there, Pranav, and Rishabh in the group. So, talking about the case, this case is about a major Honda recall that happened due to defective parts that were made at TS Tech. That is a Japanese manufacturer. It is a business associate of Honda, and it has a worldwide presence, and it manufactures motorcycle, automotives, vehicle seats, and personal watercrafts. And in the case, we also talk about the role of human resources department before, during, and after a recall. So talking about TS Tech, it has facilities in the US, which are the major supplier to Honda, and in this case, we talk about the TS Tech Alabama facility, which supplies seats to Odyssey vans and Ridgeline trucks. And the facility has a decent workforce of somewhere around 600 employees, as mentioned in the slide. Rishabh, I think the slide is not changed. Yeah. So in this case, there are somewhere around 6 lakh vehicles that are being recalled due to possible issues in seats. And there were two kind of recalls that were made due to the defects in the cars. And the case also talks about how the human resources department managed the recall and what all steps it took, and to reduce the toll on its employees' morale and to retain the employees who feared their jobs were at risk. And we'll focus on basically on the human resource aspect in this case study. So yes, my teammates will take it forward.
So Rishabh, can you move? Yes. So recalls damage a company in many ways, such as it can cause some huge financial losses. It can affect the company brand, reduce the size of demand for the product. So in the case study, we will take an example of Takata airbag recall case. So Takata is an automotive parts company which manufactures safety systems like seat belts and airbags. It was founded in 1933 and it is based in Japan. So it started manufacturing airbags in 1988 and it currently hold 20% of the airbag market. So what happened is like vehicles that were made by like 19 different automakers such as like BMW, Mercedes, they were recalled to replace frontal airbags on the driver's side and the passenger sides by National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So it was called the largest and the most complex safety recall in US history. So uh, some of what happened was the root cause was the airbags that use ammonium nitrate without a chemical drying agent. So it caused some around 19 deaths and more than 400 injuries. So it affected around 42 million vehicles in the United States, and it caused around 70 million airbags had to be replaced. So after that, there were some leaks that company was filing for bankruptcy as they were struggling to build replacement parts for the faulty airbags. But and after some time, the company was pleaded guilty in the front of US court and they were fined around 1 billion US dollars. And they were also told to set up around 125 million USD fund to compensate the victims. In 2017, company filed for bankruptcy and they sold the assets to their biggest rival, Key Safety Systems. And Key Safety Systems, the company told that they will keep all their workforce. So it seems that it was the failure was logical, but it could have been avoided. So we would see how it could have been avoided, and my teammates would take it forward.
So, Rishabh, can you change the slide? So now coming to the case. in the TS Tech, there was a problem in their side levers in the seats. So basically, Honda informed the TS Tech that there was some problems, and Honda told that they have to repair the seats. So after that information, there was some communication in the company, like there was a chance of recall. So after that recall was a possibility, higher management formed a cross-functional team. So to devise a strategy like how to deal with the recall, and the company has developed the cross-department teams. But the problem with the team was the human resource department was not included initially. So Steve was the human resource manager. He talked with the upper management and told them like he wants to include it in the team, because he know when the recall was happens, the human resource department will be required to damage the to control the damage. So after including in the team, Steve analyzes the plans, and he found that there was some gap in the planning, because in the planning there was no information about the how to communicate with the employees of the company. And Steve know if there is a lack of communication with the employees, that will hamper the growth of the company, because if the company do the recall and already there is a fear of the job loss, and if the communication is not proper, then then there is a chance of the job dissatisfaction, and the employees will leave the company. So after including in the team, Steve focus on the communication, like how to communicate with the their employees. And after analyzing all these factors, he tried to formulate a two-stage plan. Now the two-stage plan will be discussed by the Arvind.
Yeah, thank you, Mohit. Rishabh, can you just change? Thank you. So, like Mohit mentioned, the HR department and Steve was involved in the recall process, and they were asked to sit in on all the meetings pertaining to the recall. And they basically decided to come up with a two-stage action plan. In the first stage, they wanted to focus on how they would act before the news of the recall was widespread internally within the organization. And in the second stage, they wanted to focus on how what actions they would take after an official announcement was made about the recall to the public. So in the first stage, one of the areas that they initially focused on was deciding the flow of internal information sharing. That is basically when, who, and how the information would be shared to the employees within the organization. The company wanted to ensure that the employees would be hearing about the recall first from them and not from some external agency like social media or the news. So following this, they wanted to coordinate with other departments, including PR and the manufacturing departments, to draw up an initial timeline as to when the recall process would be commencing and an approximate date as to when it would end. So by getting a timeline, they wanted to portray a realistic picture about the situation and wanted to be very honest when answering the queries of all the concerned employees. By being open and honest with the employees and by portraying themselves as being totally in control of the recall process, they wanted to ensure that the employees would feel that their jobs are safe, so as to minimize the fluctuations to average turnover rates. Because as Mohit mentioned, HR department and Steve were absolutely sure that without the support of the employees and without actually retaining the employees, it would be absolutely impossible to come out of this recall process. And also it would be difficult to replace these employees if they were to leave, since no one actually wants to work in a company that is on the brink of a major financial stress as a recall process. So these were the areas that were focused on the stage one of the action plan. And I will not be going too much into stage two as it would be explained by Shalini later, but I'll just highlight some of the areas that they focused on. The first one was to put out a coherent message to all the stakeholders. That is basically they did not want any contradictory information given out to the press and internally. Also, one of the side effects of recall, as Manish mentioned, was the spread of misinformation. That is, rumors start coming around, such as the company is about to go bankrupt or there was going to be a major layoff. So the organization wanted to tackle such misinformation. They also wanted to assess how far the upper management was willing to increase monetary as well as non-monetary benefits to retain employees and assess their commitment to employee retention. And at the end, they also wanted to have a contingency plan in case of increased turnover. They did not want the recall to fail because of that, and they ensured that they have an effective contingency plan to take care of that aspect as well. So in both these stages, continuous communication and keeping up-to-date information and gathering and basically distributing up-to-date information And being constantly working with the upper management was crucial, and these functions were common to both the stages. And this is how basically the HR planned to deal with the recall. Now Shalini will be talking more about the second stage of this plan. Over to you,
Thank you,
Shalini.
Arvind. So let us look at the three major steps taken by the HR post formal announcement about the recall to the public and employees. First step taken was to have constant and detailed communication with the employees, since there were a lot of rumors attached to about whether the plant was going to be operational or shut or employees being fired. The most important step here was to communicate constantly with the employees as well as giving them the detailed information about the recall. Secondly, employee retention plan was created with the management and HR depending upon the level of necessity for workforce retention. It offered different level of incentive for workers to stay with the company, such as bonuses and other non-monetary benefits. Finally, a contingency plan with a local agency which provides temporary workers in case turnover increased and more people leave the company in larger numbers. Also, working with the local agency ensured that the new workers could be brought into the facility and trained quickly if the worst happened and the major workforce decides to leave the company. So earlier there was 2 day quality and safety training, which was later condensed to 4 hour training, and the number of people qualified to train others also increased with a month-long training to push the number of trainers and mentors. From this, we can say that with the help of good communication within the management, HR, and employees, the company saved itself from the recall. So that's all about the case.
Okay, guys, so you can begin the discussion with the class.
So basically, after reading the case, what our team the role of the human resource department is very crucial in the company. Like we have talked about the recall. So basically, there is a transparency in the communication between the upper management and the employees. So what I think, like the communication is a very crucial factor, and how to and we human resource department have to plan very crucially so that there is no misinformation between the among the employees. The class can ask the questions.
I have one question to the class. So, like in the case of Takata airbags, so there was some information that the recalls were intentionally delayed to avoid negative impact to the company. So, is that the case, or like there were some other reasons? So, anybody?
So guys, usually I think in this way, if you will ask question, probably you will get fewer responses. I think in the case discussion, it is very important that first 2 3 questions that you ask are a little bit obvious, more generic. That if people have not really understood the case well, even they can start, so that you can then build some more critical questions on them, so that they are now in that space where they can analyze the situation well and they can answer. So my suggestion would be ask few easy questions, even if you know that the class might be knowing the answers to them. First give them that confidence. Once they are confident, then you can start asking them a little those kind of questions. Okay.
Okay, so like just small question. So like uh, because of the product recall, there can be some effects, negative effects on the company. So like some financial losses or reputation. So what other damages can affect the companies? Can some example? Anything?
Another way is that, if class is not responding, it can happen sometimes. So another way is that, why not ask questions to each other in the group, right? So you ask one question and the rest of the group member start answering. Maybe the class would feel that, you guys are missing out something. So they will start interacting and they would start telling you some more facts.
Can I just go ahead and try to answer Manish's question, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like Manish mentioned, it is not. Manish also already mentioned damage to reputation as well as financial stress. So another issue that could be the company could actually struggle to attract more employees, especially during the recall process. It is absolutely paramount that they at least retain the workforce that they have, because in addition to the existing production, they'll have to come up with the production of the defective parts and the recalled parts as well. So it's absolutely important to retain at least the workforce that they have. And if in case of a turnover and in case the reputation is damaged and employees do leave, it would be difficult for them to attract even more employees, because then who would actually want to work in a company that is about to financially break down? So I think that is another side effect of a recall.
Yeah, good point. Anyone else would like to add something to this?
Another could be like the trust issues within the company. So like the sudden crisis will inevitably, like it will bring about the crisis of trust. So like consumers may lose confidence in their products, and it may reduce the demand of the product. And so the willingness to repeat the products will be cut. So the market share will also decline. So this can also be one of the effect on the company.
Sir, I would like to discuss an important thing. Like we all discussed about the role of HR in effective communication. And am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. I guess sir has lost his connection. Like is sir audible to any one of us?
No, I think sir is facing some issues.
Actually, sir's screen has stuck.
Yeah. I think we should. He left the call.
We can wait for.
Guys, पूछ लो कुछ यार.
Yeah, in that
Simran
case,
ने
if
hand raise
nobody
कर
is
रहा है.
participating, then you can go ahead. Yeah, Simran, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. So I'm from Group 3. I actually wanted to ask, like, how would the company manage the additional expenses or the overhead costs if they are going with the contingency plan with the local agency? Does it not burden the company financially?
Yes, Simran, definitely this will increase the cost over the company, but that would be, like definitely there has to be some recall costs for the company. Like company just cannot simply recall and not have any extra expenses. So definitely company has to incur some expenses to, continue its operations. But the point is that if the company is, trying to shorten or trying not to do these expenses, then the long-term loss which the company can have in the form of loss of reputation and loss of other things, that would be a major thing. Like in the case, it is often, in the beginning, it is mentioned that there are some companies which, recall their products after the regulatory authorities, they say that you have some defective products. But there are some companies who, they just come up by themselves telling that, yeah, we have a sort of a faulty product which we want to replace. So the second case, the latter case is, that builds up the perception in the market that yes, this company is responsible for its customers. They are ready to take proactive steps. They are ready to incur costs to save the customer's comfort. So definitely, to in the long run, that can be a beneficial thing. So yeah, that would definitely amount to a cost, but it would be necessary to for the company to sustain in the long run. Have I been explainable enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, guys, you can go ahead in case there are no questions from the class.
Sir, I will take up the conclusion part of this case. Like after going through the entire case, there were three major things which we found for for this case. The first one was that the retaining the workforce, like definitely in any recall situation, the retaining the employee retention is the make or break. If the company has been able to retain its employees, it is going to sustain this recall process. If it fails to do so, it has to follow the repercussions. Same case was for this company as well. And in that particular thing, to retain the employees, it's the role of the HR to keep the employees informed, combat misinformation and rumors, retain employees through incentives like bonuses, etc., and preparing for the scenario if a large section of employees leave. Now, all these four things, which definitely appear to be a very generic thing, but they are very much important from the perspective of retaining the employees. The second thing is the impact on the overall profits. Now, definitely, as while I was answering Simran's questions, I mentioned that it's very much important to incur costs to sustain the company in the long run. So definitely, the overall profits were impacted during the year in which the recall costs were realized. But it is expected to regain its previous levels because of the launch of a new model of Odyssey by the coming year. Now, Ford, which was the major customer for this company, that company and Odyssey was the model for which the products were supplied, the seats were supplied for. Now, since Odyssey is coming up with a new model, definitely there would be new sales order for the company. And when these sales order come in, the loss which the company is facing as of now, that will be recovered in the coming run. So in the coming coming years, it will be helpful in averaging out the profit levels over a longer period. Now, definitely, once we have incurred the cost, it's very much important, and we have retained the employees as well. It's very much important to plan for the future. Now, though there was it's a part of it was mentioned in the case that there was a delay in a sub supplier. The sub supplier failed to supply the products immediately. So, though there was a delay in that process because of that, but once the supply gets restored, it would be a tough task for the HR management. Okay, because when the entire workforce would start to come again, and the work levels would increase, because the work would not just be the regular production work, there would be work for the recalling work as well. So there would be extensive workload upon the workers. Now, extensive workload would definitely lead to employee fatigue, which will impact the overall turnover. Now, at that point of time, the role of the HR in so that they could maintain these levels, they could be proactive enough to look at the situations which could hamper the things. That would be a tough task for Steve, the HR manager, for to plan for this particular thing. Now we will move on to the recommendations, which will be presented by my colleague Pranav.
Okay, so here are a few recommendations. So the first recommendation is the creating a recall response team. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
Pranav.
yes, go on, go on.
Okay. Or creating a recall responses. Why it is important? Because the response team will look after the various processes and the change in the processes, and that will be too specific to the recall processes. So that's why it's important to form this team. Second is the building credibility in the stakeholders. Why it's important? There are multiple stakeholders like client itself, employees, shareholders, or the people. So building credibility will help company itself to accomplish their goal, like smoothly processing the recall, whatever they're planning to do. So building credibility, and the TS has done its job at some extent, but since the point is very important, so it should be mentioned. Third would be the telling the success stories. It's one of the most important part, because when the company has get done with the recall process or is in the last stage of the recall, it's important to them to tell the story of the people, story of the company, like how, through which phase the company gone, and how they fight back and in the difficult time, and that can inspire other people, and also help the company to gain its reputation. And fourth is rebuilding the brand. After the recall gets done, company should think on rebuilding its brand through various channels like advertising and promotion. It will definitely help the company to increase reputation and also gain new customers. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else you would like to add, Group 6? So you're done with your presentation?
Yes, it's done from our end.
Okay, anyone from the audience who want to ask any question to Group 6? So it seems like Section D has been particularly very harsh to you guys today. They don't want to say anything.
No, sir.
Yeah.
I'll ask. Good morning. Good afternoon, guys. So, as a last one of your recommendation was to go for the advertisement and PR and all stuff. So, is it a good idea to invest in advertisement and all before changing your manufacturing technique or whatever your inbuilt system is to manufacture the product? Because product is itself a kind of an advertisement to itself. So rather than investing in the process to improve your product, is it a good idea to invest in advertisement and PR?
Just adding to what Ashwani is saying, my question is that if people who have read the case carefully might have seen that this is more like a B2B kind of an arrangement, right? So the end users basically sometimes, and most of the times actually, they're not even aware about what TS Tech is doing or what is TS Tech, right? So whom are you advertising for and how does it affect you?
Sir, we can also advertise to the company. In B2B, one company is selling the products to the other company. If we are doing the PR activities, we are actually telling our success stories, because recall is a big thing. And if some we have seen the examples of the Takata, they have failed. They sell their companies, and but in the case of the TS Tech, the main thing is that they have successfully did the recall. So if they tell their stories, the other companies can have the belief, can trust the TS Tech, because after the recall, many companies do not want to buy the products of the TS Tech, or like they do not trust on the TS Tech. But if they told that like they have successfully did the recall, they did not fire any employees, the trust on the company will increase. And apart from that, if we tell the success story, the trust of the employees also increases. Suppose from the lower management workers or the any type of workers, if they listen the success stories of the company, they think that they can work in this company, which will ultimately affect the growth of the company. So it is very important to showcase our result, like what we did and what are our potential.
I would like to add to what Mohit. Okay, go Pranav.
Yeah. So another thing was the recommendation is for after the company gets over with the recall processes, and when the recall process gets over, the company has already been passed through various certain stages and improved a lot. So at this time, the advertising, branding the company's image, it's more important. That's why the recommendation was there. Yeah, Rishabh, you can go ahead.
And so there is one more thing which is about any company. Like for any company, when one company goes into distress, and when that company bounces back from that distress, that is a major fit for any company. And similarly, considering the case for TS Tech as well, because if they land into this trouble, they are able to get out of this trouble. And then if the world knows that yes, they have got into the trouble and then came back from it, that would be a major point in the brand building for that company. So I think that might help the company to get newer clients, just like Ford. Other companies might also want to get into that. So that can be also be one thing.
Ashwani, are you satisfied with the answers that you have got?
I would say no. Reason being, PR works for the general population only. If I'm a car manufacturer and I want to buy a product from your company, I would look more into the product rather than what your advertisement you are publishing. So if your product is not up to the mark, I would not be buying. Doesn't matter how much good publicity or advertisement you publish on any network.
But Ashwini, PR also
Yeah, definitely.
That would not work with the manufacturer. For example, I am Maruti or Honda or any other. Let's go to the Tesla as well. I would work. I would see the quality of your car seat because the name of the company of the car seat is not going to come in the public. It would be firstly would be Maruti, Honda, or Tesla. That this car is having a faulty airbags or product is there. So that is going to be the issue. The inquiry will be
There's
said.
one thing. Okay, Ashwani, there is one thing which you mentioned,
Definitely.
that when a company
The
comes up with anything like that and it focuses anything, like when we find a default in the Tata vehicles, for suppose, we don't just go on and blame the manufacturers of their seat or for their airbags or for anything. When Tata company, that recalls its vehicles, okay, the credit goes to Tata company. Definitely, when Tata company gets the credit, it's definitely going to invest in those companies which had made sure that this recall was possible. So that sort of a brand building will happen with our clients. That is the first thing. Second thing, you mentioned that definitely when we are going to buy the car or anything, we are going to focus entirely on the quality. But that would be very much possible if we are entirely into rational buying. In India or any other country, buying is not just simply rational buying, looking at the quality and everything. Brand perception matters a lot. If it was not about brand perception, there was no point in doing marketing at all. Everyone would be just looking at the good products. It would just make sense if we can just let the people know that we have a product. And once they get to know it, there was no point in letting them know that what qualities or what benefits we have. Everybody can just come up and test the vehicle. If they find it good, they will just buy it. But there is a point for getting doing PR, doing brand building, because that makes a perception in the minds of the people. That definitely helps. Quality definitely makes a mark, and definitely I agree with you that quality would be the uh, definitely that should be the first and the primary contribution, the primary focus of the company. But while we are suggesting that we are going to invest in PR or anything, we are not suggesting that we are going to cut our costs for other components. We are going to incur some costs. We are just saying that we will be utilizing that thing as a brand building exercise, as something which we could leverage upon. That's our point of view.
Well,
adding to this point, yeah, adding to Rishabh's point, one more factor is there is that one of the stakeholder is the shareholder. It's not company is involved in B2B. It's not that the customer is only the stakeholder. Shareholders are also there, and the image to be revived in their mind is also important. So that's why it's important to rebuild the brand and spend some money on advertising and branding.
And Ashwini, like you mentioned, since like most of their clients are B2B clients, right? They would be more concerned about the technicalities of the product. So is it not important to make them understand that this was our earlier specifications and now we have made these changes and our product is better now. These are our new specifications. So in terms of PR, not just advertising, it could be in the form of technical brochures or even detailed emails that are sent to prospective clients and make them understand that, okay, we made a mistake. This was our specifications earlier and this is what we learned from it. And this is our renewed product. So
that
is
is
that not?
exactly what I said. Rather than going for the advertisement and the all, invest more into your product, which would be better.
Yeah,
Because
but after investing into the product, is it not important to make the clients or prospective clients know that we have invested in the product and we have made the changes? That is what we are
well,
trying to imply by saying PR.
I, yeah, your PR meant something else, but PR usually means for the general public, not for any business point of view, because they are going to into very key details if this product is suitable for my product. That was what I was saying. And Rishabh, just you mentioned that it would be good image for the Tata to recall their car, and it would save their image. It would be just like how to be a millionaire. Firstly, go become a billionaire, and then become a millionaire. So it would put a dent on the Tata's image, and it would not. People would not see whose airbag was that or whose other product was that. People would see just that this was Tata's car. They have put a default onto that. You have to be Nestle that your Maggie product has got an issue, but you recall that. But that was again into B2C market. That wasn't B2B market. So that is where PR definitely comes. Probably will
Okay.
make it clear.
Okay, I think on this discussion now we should take a pause because we are just stretching on one issue for quite some time now. I think the thing is already obvious now that when it comes to B2B kind of a business, the marketing or whatever, how do you communicate with your potential customers has to be slightly different than the other thing. So we all agree to that part. Probably I'll reflect it on this issue a little later when I'll be summarizing both the cases, both the presentations and how the case has shaped today as a discussion. I'll try to reflect on that, but let's move on to some other questions if we have for group 6.
Good afternoon, sir. I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned trust. Like, the thing is that if I have a faulty product, how will you get the other manufacturers or customers, trust my product? Because now the thing is that you have a faulty product. What are the measures you're going to take that, or what are the trust measures that you're essentially going to say that, we've improved the product. Now, how you're going to get them back? So that, apart from PR, like that's not really, you have to mention something, right? That how will you get the trust back?
Yeah, so I think Ajit, what he is trying to ask is that now since some damage has been done, though they are in the process of recall and anything, would you as a TS Tech employee or management, would you take some additional measures to mitigate whatever damage has been done?
Like definitely, Ajit, what you mentioned that there has been a dent in the image of the company as the quality product has been delivered, but definitely because it was identified beforehand that there is a faulty product, that's why the product has been recalled back into the company as well, and it is being replaced, it is being repaired. The problems which were identified, they are being repaired. I mean, they are the problems which have been, they are being solved by the company's employees, and definitely that is a part of the case as well. But right now I guess we are more into the role of HR into solving these things, and probably this thing would not be under the purview of HR whether these things are solved and communicated to the client effectively as whether or not. So I think that being an HR, my more major perspective would be towards how do I handle the problems which I faced on the employees front while this recall process is being done. So definitely that, but what you mentioned that this has to be done, that would be done, and to restore the trust which has to be done, that would take some time, and probably it would be done by the marketing team or the client relation team, which would be working on to make the clients satisfied with the trust, or I mean satisfied with the level of safety and other things that we have in our product.
Yeah, but like as you mentioned, right, HR. So the thing is that if a company, I mean, like what I'm trying to say is that now there's a doubt, right, created in the minds of the employees that once this is done, it can happen again, or the same procedure can happen again, and this comes under the purview of HR, right? That you have to prevent such doubts occurring. So now, how will you go about that?
Okay, I think Ajit has asked an important question, but I think we have also given so much of time to group 6. So let's also hear from group 3. And once they are done with their presentation and their discussion, we will make it open to both the groups and we can discuss this together. That how to address if this is an HR, if it comes under the HR domain, then how to address that thing. Okay, so group 3, are you guys ready? Whom shall I make the presenter?
Yes, sir. So please make Priyansha the presenter.
Yeah, can you please raise your hand? Yeah.
Yes, sir, I've raised my hand.
Yes, and group 6, I have reserved my comments for your presentation and discussion. I'll discuss it together with group 3 performance. Okay, so yeah, group 3, you can quickly begin. You don't have to show us the entire presentation again. You can show us the parts which you think that were not really covered by group 6 or which you think are very important and we have to focus on that again, and then quickly read to the discussion, because discussion is more important than the facts, again repeating the facts. Okay.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see the screen. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. So starting off with the case, a little brief about the company which we think would be important. So the company was a mid-sized company with about 625 to the maximum of 675 employees at a time, and they work 2 shifts per day as well. And the office was running Monday to Friday and occasionally on Saturdays. Also, this company was 17 years in business in Alabama and a lot longer with the Japanese parent that they had. And they were the automotive supplier of the year as well. And they were awarded that prior to this recall exercise.
Yeah, I think you are on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Sir, I think I'm facing some issue. Was I audible the entire time I was presenting? Actually, I'm not able to change my screen as well.
Yeah, I think last half a minute or so we could not hear you, but before that we were able to. Or maybe we can give rights of presentation to someone else so that you can speak freely. Yeah, I think she got disconnected. Would anyone else like to take over from group 3?
So you can give presentation rights to me. I'll present.
Okay. Can you quickly raise your hand, Himanshu? Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think it is done.
Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, yes. Please quickly start.
Okay.
Yes, so I'll continue from where I stopped before. So these are a few details about the company and how they had been functioning. The company was also 17 years in business since in the Alabama store that they had, the factory that they had over there, and a lot longer in the Japanese parent that they had. And they were also awarded Automotive Supply of the Year long before the recall exercise that was carried on. Himanshu, can you please change the slide? Thank you. On 29 December, so this is when the recall exercise was carried on, and this was for one of the vehicles that they had been producing for Honda, the Odyssey minivan. And the vehicles that were recalled had 2 problems. One with the release levers that they had in the second row seats, and one also with the seats bar. So both these things were actually malfunctioning, which had not created any kind of a problem as of now. But the thing was that in case of any collision or in case of any event of accidents, this could be fatal and very dangerous for the people who were seated in the second row. So about 80% of the vehicles that they had produced between 2010 to 2015 were recalled, which was a very, very big deal, because this showed that most of the vehicles and most of the passengers that they had were actually in risk of collisions and injuries and even deaths if they were driving in this car. And an important thing to note here is that there can be two kinds of recalls. One, that the company calls themselves recalls the vehicles themselves because they identify an issue, and the second one could be if there is any kind of a regulatory complaint or any kind of a customer complaint due to which there could be some kind of an issue with the product. So here the company, here Honda, initiated the recalls themselves, so that based on the possibility that these kinds of defects could injure somebody else, one of their customers. So they initiated the recall themselves without any customer complaints as of now. And the another important thing to note here is bringing the human resources aspect into the recall exercise. So the human resources department took a lot of steps during and even after the recall. So what really happens is that during these kinds of exercises, the financial status of the company gets damaged, and due to which if the company is in a dire financial trouble, one of the first resources to be reduced is the human resource, because employees are the most expensive resources that a company usually has. So this is a basic background that we want everybody to know about the case. I'd now like to hand over to Himanshu.
Sure, thank you, Priyansha. Am I audible?
Yes, Himanshu, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you, Priyansha. So I will discussing about the role of HR, what HR did in this recall. So the recall happened in December of 2016. So the recall was planned initially in summer of the 2016, when the technical team came up with the issue that this is the issue which is happening. So there was a discussing during the month of June that the recall might happen. So the upper management form cross-functional teams to carry out the recall if in case it happens. So the Steve was the HR manager at the TS Tech Alabama. So what he did, he asked the senior management, upper management, to include him in all the planning committees. So he saw the plan the upper management has made. He pointed out that this plan doesn't have the communication part, that how will they communicate to employees, that how and when the recall happen. So the first thing Steve did was he asked the upper management to include him in every commanding planning committee. So after coming into planning, he made a two part of plan. The first part will execute before the recall, before the announcement of recall, which is majorly internally. The second recall was after the second part of the plan was after the recall announcement happens, how will they handle the thing? That was external plan. So in the first plan, what HR did, HR coordinated with all the other teams. First, they coordinated with the PR team to ensure that whatever the message they are giving to the public. No, sorry, in the first plan, he created a detailed roadmap that how the recall will happen, what are the timelines, what are the technical specification, how long will it take, how will it impact the employees. So he did all the planning and prepared all the documents for the communication of between the among the employees. So he then he coordinated with the PR team what all messages have to be given to the employees and what all the information is given to the public, so they don't contradict and they don't create chaos in the employees. See, in the recall, what happened is the company goes into financial trouble. The worst thing that can happen, the employees can start leaving the company thinking there's a company is going to financial troubles, they may fire some of the employees soon. So company starts leaving, people start leaving, and new people also doesn't join because when the company is in financial distress, no person want to join. So to avoid that, the HR rolled out the first announcement where he announced that there would be no layoffs. So he also presented the detailed timeline that during this time the recall will happen and this is how it will happen. And turns out the announcement given by the HR was so effective that the employee turnover, which was expected to be expected to rise beyond 10% or 20%, it only reached till 4.2%. We saw only 4.2% increase, so it was a success. So the second phase of the plan was to continuously update the employees after the recall happened. The continuously update the employees that what is the status of the recall, how is it, how the things are going on, and how the future will look like. So they don't get information from the external media agency or anything. So they they created a proactive approach and continuous update of everything, every detailed thing to the employees. So HR also considered offering different type of incentive for the employees, which are much of the important to the company. So they included bonuses and some non-monetary benefits as well. HR also worked out a contingency plan that in case if a mass resignation happens, mass resign happens, many people suddenly leave the company, then what will they do? So they make a plan with the local hiring agency. That local hiring agency will provide them the worker for on the temporary basis if they ever need it. And for the emergency condition, they created a training module which was earlier 2 day long into 4 days long, 4 hour long training module, and they also increase the number of trainers. So in case of emergency, they are well prepared. So this was the all the roles the HR played in the whole situation. The further analysis will be taken forward by Deepika.
Thank you, Himanshu. Thank you for the briefing. I will now present the analysis of the entire situation. So the case in itself presents a very volatile situation at the corporate, especially considering that it is a manufacturing setup that heavily relies on its human capital or labor. So the fear of recalling is deeply engraved in the past, but thankfully the solutions can be brought with an out-of-the-box thinking. And in this fast-paced world where the PR, the media, rival firms do their best to tarnish the image and capture the market's at slightest possible opportunity, the leaders must be open to the brand new ways of doing things and to innovate the solutions effectively. So during the first announcement, Steve made clear that there would be no layoffs and a timeline for recall was provided. And Steve cut down on the uncertainties by firstly, facing it. So facing it was a major challenge and Steve effectively did that. And secondly, he assured the employees that none would be laid off and, he gave them some assurances, some reassurances. And hence there was only a 4.2 increase in turnover in the next 3 months following the recall announcement. So that was one major achievement done by the HR department. As much as he would have been scared by the turnovers, the layoffs, and increased expenses on all the fronts, Steve actually went for bold HR moves, and this is what eventually saved the company. The next point is anticipation. Well, anticipation played a key role here because instead of solely looking to the past for answers, Steve anticipated the future by breaking it into smaller steps, smaller chunks, and thereby redesigning it. And besides all the efforts that Steve put in, he never neglected the possibility that talent retention efforts could actually go in vain. Whatever efforts that he was putting in, whatever planning that he was doing, it could actually go in vain. Nevertheless, he did that, and that turned out to be majorly successful. He had contingency plans for replacement of workforce just in case a major turnover happened. So that planning was also spot on, and it eventually worked well. The next point would be continuous communication. Now, continuous communication was the most critical role for HR, and probably the best step that Steve took was to get into the core of planning team so that the HR team could have the most up-to-date information about the recall as well as whatever follow-ups that are going to happen about the recall with the management. And the dissemination of information was regularly done, even daily done by the HR team, which eventually gathered more and more trust of the employees and of other stakeholders. And this detailed communication eventually curbed the rumors, gossips, and any false news from getting spread. Because in such a situation, in such adverse conditions, The worst that could happen to a company would be false rumors, gossips, or anything that is being, spread by the media. So this was done quite rightly. And another point, which another bold HR move that the team took was cost cutting at the right place. The company knew beforehand that it would be financially hit during the recall, but instead of firing the people, instead of doing all the layoffs, the company came up with some innovative solutions to cut down on costs. So the traditional 2-day quality and safety training was condensed into 1 4-hour training, and the number of people who were pretty much qualified to take the trainings were doubled. Yeah, the month-long training was actually cut down on, and the trainers were increased so that more people could take the advantage at one point. So the decisions were quite on point and required some bold on-the-feet thinking, and Steve and his team definitely did that. According to this article, TS Tech was still conducting the recall, and a shortage of parts pushed the completion date of replacement back by a few months. However, from an HR perspective, we feel that the disaster was totally prevented as the workforce was stable and the current production was not affected. So these type of bold HR moves have definitely saved the company from sinking. I would now pass the baton to my next team member, Tanika.
So we'll talk about what are factors the HR considered while during the recall process. So definitely there were a lot of aspects to this recall. So HR took into consideration all of this. First was damage control. If the news of recall had been out by third parties, that will further damage the reputation of the company. Recall will add to extra workforce need, which won't be satisfied with a damaged reputation, since it is highly unlikely that people will look for employment at a company with a damaged reputation. So to deal with this, Steve coordinated with PR team to ensure that a message given to the employees did not contradict with the information that was given to the public, and he ensured that the message which was given by the PR team that was correct too. Another thing that needed to be considered was workforce retention. So after the recall, the company will need to keep up with the regular production as well as produce replacement parts. So they will require more than normal workforce. So for that, it is highly essential that the present workforce should be retained. So for this, Steve created employee retention initiatives and incentives like bonuses and other non-monetary benefits. He also communicated clearly that there will be no layoffs. This helped in employee retention. The third aspect of recall was communication. Events like recalls causes stress, worry, and uncertainty among the workers. Employees might start looking for new opportunities in the face of uncertainty. So it was critical that the news of recall was out to the employees by the company and not by third parties like news agency. So for this, Steve took into consideration all of this, and he was the first person to tell his employees about the recall. He also relayed that no layoffs will take place and provided employees with a timeline of the recall. This gave the employees confidence in the company, or also helped to combat misinformation. And last but not the least, Steve came up with a contingency plan. This was necessary because in case the workforce did eventually leave, the company should have a backup plan for the production of replacement parts. So for this, Steve came up with a plan along with a local temporary hiring agency. This helped in quick onboarding and training. The number of people who were qualified to train, they were also increased. And the traditional 2-day plan or 2-day safety and quality training, that was condensed into a 4-hour training. So all this ensured that the company was ready even in the case that employees eventually leave. I'll now ask Aditya to cover up the next part.
Okay, so guys, be a little quick because I don't think we are going to get a lot of time for discussion. Also, like 15 minutes for the presentation is almost over, right? So try to be as quick as possible. Don't repeat the points which are already known now, right? So focus on something which you feel is unique and very important from the point of discussion that you are going to have later with the class.
Yes, Himanshu, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so talking about the reasons that leads to the failure of a company during such a crisis situation, such as product recalls, I would like to give an example of the company of Takata Corporation, which is mentioned in the case. The Takata Corporation faced a similar kind of a situation, such as the TS Tech Alabama, where they had to recall a segment of their product, which was airbags, citing some safety issues. And the outcome for the company turned out to be exactly opposite to what TS Tech did, because whereas TS Tech emerged out of the situation without having any major setbacks, but on the other hand, Takata Corporation had to file for bankruptcy within a few years after the product recall was announced. So the major reasons were, first of all, due to lack of proper communication within the organization, rumors circulated within the employees, which led to the emergence of high levels of stress and ambiguity within the employees, who started to look for external opportunities, and that led to an abnormal high employee turnover rate in the organization. This high rate of employee turnover attracted the external media attention, which fueled the fire of the generating rumors about the company, and this led to a kind of a snowballing effect until the situation got out of hands for the company. And yeah, so moving on to the next slide. Yeah, so I have identified majorly three reasons for the failure of a company during a situation of product recall. Firstly is the communication. Since the company, mostly the companies know that during product recalls, the product recalls may have a high amount of negative impact onto their financial and stock performance, and this also has a major spillover effect also, apart from the associated products of the recall. The higher management of the company is kind of reluctant to communicate properly about the realistic situation, about the situation to their employees, as well as to their internal departments, which leads to the slowdown of the decision making in the organization. Second is the workforce. Since the workforce starts to leave, the companies lose their major backbone for the production during such a situation, which is mostly important in order to replace the products that are being recalled from the market. And finally is the lack of proper strategy, which is the origin of all the issues that we have seen so far. And apart from the strategy of introducing the new product and the total recall process, the company should also have a contingency plan in place in order to plan for the situations if the company observes a high rate of attrition. So taking on forward will be taken by Samarth.
Sir, actually, we wanted to ask, should we start with our recommendations or should we start it post the class discussion?
I think you should go ahead with the discussion, and after that, if you feel that there are certain recommendations that were missed out of the discussion, then you can add them in the end.
So just to add, sir, actually we had additional recommendations. So due to paucity of time, would it be okay if we give the recommendations first and then take on the questions?
See, my only concern is that once you give them the recommendation, then probably they would start thinking about them rather than some other possibilities which we might have missed out. So in the end, you just summarize it. If you feel that there are certain things which have not been covered, you summarize it in the end. No issues.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, did the HR play a gamble or something? Because they declared there will be no initial layoffs. But after, what if the company faces a bankruptcy later? How will they deal with it?
I would like to take that question. So I think in terms of the corporate policies, I wouldn't exactly call it a gamble. I would call it a confidence in employees, confidence in the ability of the company. Because in times like these, how you stick together matters more than how you pan out in the end. So I would say if we had not played this so-called gamble or so-called trust in employees, the company would have faltered anyway. So starting with a positive and optimistic approach is the first step in such crisis times. So I wouldn't say it would be called a gamble, but an additional trust in the ability of the company and employees to pull this situation over. And that's how I feel that business is taken over to the next line.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question.
I would like to ask a question, sir, to the group. That like you mentioned that the HR came up with some incentives for employee retention. So, is there a way that these incentives can play a negative role in case of a fraud recall? Is it possible, and how it would be?
Definitely. To answer Rishabh, I would say that definitely it is possible that at times of providing the incentives, there might be some sort of unintended consequences that in fact we have written in our last slide. It might lead to like customer dissatisfaction. It might also lead to uh, decreased collaboration amongst the employees because some are given the incentives, some are not. And we also suggested a social recognition program. However, again, it could lead to decreased collaboration amongst the employees. So there might be some intended consequences which are positive in nature and some other consequences which are negative and which we might have to tolerate because of a product recall.
Just to add to this point, I would like to give an example for this. I don't remember the exact year, but there was a time when Toyota also faced a similar situation. And that arose because of the incentives they provided. The incentive they provided was that the engineering outputs were linked on the basis of cost-cutting measures that the engineering team took, and a result of that, defects started occurring in the engine. So we can see in this clearly in this case that how incentives are actually promoted to a product recall. So cost cutting measures in a way did that.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions to the class, you can also do that.
So we just wanted to ask, like, what does the class think that what are other ways in which the situation could have been handled better? Like we have had written our suggestions. What is the class suggestion? That is it.
I think they are running out of ideas. No issues. You go ahead and the additional recommendations that you were talking about, you can discuss them with the class.
Sure, sir.
Sir, I had a
Himanshu can
question.
have the next slide.
Yes, somebody wants to ask something.
Sir, my question is could the team explain how did miscommunication affect the employee morale?
So yeah, if there had been a miscommunication and if the news of recall had been out by an external agency instead of the company itself, then employees will lose the confidence in their company. Like you won't have control in how the news agency will paint the recall. So it could happen that employee would think that the future of company is uncertain and they could start leaving the company. So this is one of the ways how miscommunication could actually hamper the employee morale.
Also, adding on to that, if the employees get to hear about some negative news about the company from outside the company, and this generally refers to the fact that the company itself doesn't have much of confidence on itself because they are not communicating the news about the company properly to their employees and those who are the part of the organization. And this really lowers down the morale of the employees because they start to feel that the employer that they are working for is going down the hill in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand.
Himanshu, I think we can move to the recommendations and take further questions post that. So can I have the next slide? Yeah, thanks. So, some major discussions that had been done till now, they have been done on the basis of the case study that we had, what all that was mentioned in the case study, and we believe that the HR took a good response to that in the matter of case study, and certain additional recommendations that we have from our side are the follows. So, one could be, sir, the personalized messages from CXO level heads that demonstrates organizations' loyalty and commitments toward employees. And having have had worked in an organization, I believe messages when they come from the C level executives, it actually boosts our morale, and it actually recalculates our faith in the company and actually helps in taking on the situations in future as well. And second would be the social recognition programs as well. So just having the thought of recommendations, or just having a chance to acknowledge the employees, their hard work, their success, could also induce a culture in the organization that goes a long way in my opinion. And what that does is it boosts the confidence, also makes the employees attached to the organization per se. The next would be the giving comp offs. So comp off is something that compensatory off when possible to prevent burnout. So we know that in cases of product recalls, you might have to work overtime. You might have to work on days more than your usual schedule because of the unplanned situation that arises, and because of that, a burnout may arise. And what burnout might lead to is lack of productivity and dissatisfaction. So giving comp off when possible would address this problem, I would say. The next recommendations would be taken up by Simran.
So one of the major important recommendations that we would suggest is identifying the stakeholders. So the HR executive should actually develop a recall manual that details the company's policy guidelines in the event of a recall. And then the person with responsibility, for example, Steve actually requested to be a part of the planning committee, but we are proposing that there should be a HR executive in place for the strategic management beforehand, and he should identify the key stakeholders throughout the organization who might be called on to act in the recall situation. And another important recommendation from our side would be an open discussion amongst all the employees. Like as Samath said, there would be a burnout amongst the employees during the time of a product recall. So an open discussion would facilitate talk about their likes, dislikes. Along with this, one-on-one engagement with the HR department people, the ones who are well versed with the communication and the people skills, could also help boost employee morale within the organization. Himanshu, could you please move to the next slide? So here we have written the consequences. There would be two kinds of consequences, the unintended and the intended. Starting with the intended consequences, first would be a productivity boost and increased employee confidence. Recalls stirs up a lot of negativity and angry customers, angry employees. So we want to ensure that negativity do not creep into the company, and further the productivity will increase eventually. Second will be setting the right organization culture, handling communication effectively with the customers, employees, stakeholders throughout the process is extremely important to ensure that we are not blindsiding anyone in the company, right? So third would be times of crisis improve collaboration among the employees. I believe if the team is prepared to handle a recall, they will accept it gracefully and could also work as a collaborative workforce, like so ensuring that the productivity does not decrease. Fourth would be the retention of the workforce. And again, one most important motive is to maximize the retention of the workforce, which again could be done with the right communication at periodic intervals. Now, Samath would be going away with the unintended consequences.
So having said the additional recommendations and the intended messages we had through that, there are always unintended consequences that may arise out of your actions. So some of those are as follows. First would be the employee division that arises out of selective appreciation. So what happens is when you give a social recognition program in a company, you select some employees for appreciation, and what that does is it might make other employees question why they weren't actually appreciated and why only one employee was appreciated. But the truth of the matter is that you can't appreciate all employees. So that is a negative consequence of this action that sometimes arises, but addressing that is also equally important. Second is dissatisfaction among employees. Another unintended consequence arising out of this is dissatisfaction. So when the company is not doing well and some certain employees are only appreciated, there might be a sense of dissatisfaction as well among employees that might arise between a certain section of employees, I would say. So the next one is customer dissatisfaction. So from moving from employees to customers now. So when news like this comes out, of course there would be customer dissatisfaction. The name and the goodwill that the company owns is going down, and with that, with the inconvenience the customers are facing while having to return their cards for the seats change and all, that would also increase the customer dissatisfaction. And the next is additional expense and overhead costs. So among all the processes in a product recall, overhead cost and additional expenses are there, but having to maintain the culture of the organization, having to take the additional uh, uh, measures that we talked about, there would be additional expenses and overhead costs which might uh, spring the balance out of the budget for the company. So in times of times like these, profits are also decreased. The profit percentage is also decreased. So overhead expense also is an unintended consequence that gives a great disadvantage to a company. So that will be all from our side, sir. And we would like to entertain questions based on a presentation from the class if they have further.
Yeah, thank you, Group 3. Any questions?
I want to ask a questions.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So regarding the communication, right? It was a good presentation. The recommendations were very good. And one recommendation which I found, right, Samar told, I guess, the direct communication from the leadership team to the employee. But what are the communication channels? Like what I observed usually, right, the line manager and the HR, their role is very important to communicate that. And sometimes line manager are not as good. I mean, they say that people leave organizations, don't leave organization, they leave bad manager. And there is a lot of importance of line manager and their immediate supervisors, since we are talking about the workers, right? So can you tell me about something about the communication channel, how they got communicated, like how everyone, like it's a direct open letter, how is this whole process?
So, Rahul, I would like to share an incident with you that happened with me at my workplace. I worked with Indigo. So, when there was COVID, there were layoffs at my place as well. And for that, the employee morale was down when COVID started because of the halting of all flights and the revenue that we weren't able to get in for the company. So, in those times, I personally experienced this was that there was a direct email coming from the CEO, Rono Datta, that was at that time. So that mail mentioned everything, what the company was planning, what the plans they had for employees, and how they managed to execute that. So I believe direct mails from CEO, what they did was they firstly established credibility that these cannot be wrong. Secondly, it not only motivated employees at analyst level, it also motivated employees at director level or the line managers level, which you were saying. So a CEO acts as a person who leads by example, and direct emails are a form of leading by example in that case. So I meant in that way. So is that clear?
Yeah, I understood. I'm saying that point was well taken, but like how in the ground level, I was thinking how it got communicated to you, like how your manager
Direct email,
reinforced
direct
that,
emails
or
from the direct emails from the CEO over mail. So channels
so
like these
you
that
used to
eliminate
read
the
emails, because I never used to read any mail from the CEO, and I know the behavior, because most of the employees they have more trust with people who they contact directly. That's why I
Okay,
use the
okay.
word line
I think
manager or
I
something like
think
that.
I also should get into this discussion because see, Rahul, there are two things. See, first thing is that you may not be reading every email, but if it is coming from the top, obviously you will pay some attention to it, right? And I think what Rahul want to ask exactly is that those emails, those formal communication is okay, but I think some kind of motivation, some kind of clarity should also come from the immediate supervisor or someone who understand the ground realities. By understanding, I mean who is seeing all the things which are going on in the ground. So I think that is also a valid question, that how do we address that part. So anyways, I think there are a lot of things that we are yet to cover in this course, and we should not try to answer all those things in by taking example of just this case, right? In that way it would not be really fair, because there are so many underlying things that we also need to understand before getting into that. But good to see that these kind of questions are coming. I know we have run out of time. If you guys will allow me, I'll take 5 minutes, though I want to discuss a lot of things. But in 5 minutes, I'll try to cover few important points so that we do not miss out on this, because the next class we will have only in the next week. And by that time, I don't know how much of this thing will retain and how much will dilute. So in 5 minutes, two, three things I want to cover. First thing is that this was the first case that we picked up in this course, and first case is always difficult. This was a very interesting case. This was also a very general case. In fact, you will find all the cases that I have picked up are not really hardcore HR cases. I have picked up all those cases in which you can see a lot of things happening, right? In this case also, like after the group 6 made their presentation, couple of questions were asked by Ashwini and Ajit. They were more like they were chartering into other territories also. They were not pure like HR questions, that how do you manage your PR, and how do you establish your trust in the market again, and all those things. So that is not completely core HR thing, but that is how I have picked up these cases. Where you can see a lot of things happening together, because this is how actually the HR works in the organization. I've been telling you guys right from the beginning that HR is not about just one department which is taking care of things in the organization, making sure that everything is in place. No, that's not HR anymore. HR is more about, we as a manager